Good afternoon. The state of African American culture in the United States has been and continues to change and develop. From the African American oppression and the slave trade that began in the 17th and 18th century, which attempted to strip nearly all cultural heritage away, there have been those who have fought tirelessly for change. Fortunately, there have been many leaders in the African American community that have compelled African Americans to regain their cultural identity. Some early civil rights pioneers paved the way for growth and freedom from oppression. From Sojourner Truth in the late 1700s to George Washington Carver in the late 1800s, who taught former groups of slaves unique and important life skills. Civil rights pioneers promoted prosperity for all. In the early 1920s, the Harlem Renaissance, led by Ramar Bearden and Allen Locke, attempted to move the African American community to return to their African roots. All of these leaders and pioneers of African American culture strived for civil rights equality and paved the way for Martin Luther King Jr. Martin Luther King Jr. was born on January 15, 1929, in Atlanta, Georgia, to his mother Alberta and his father, Reverend Martin Luther King Sr. He was an individual of above average intelligence. He never actually graduated from high school. Instead, when he was 15, he attended Morehouse College, where he graduated with a bachelor's degree in sociology in 1948. During his time attending school at Morehouse, the words of the gospel spoke to him. He used the church his father was a reverend as a platform to refine his speaking abilities. He soon attended Crozer Theological Seminary, where he earned his Bachelor of Divinity degree. Ultimately, he earned his PhD from Boston College in 1955. While attending school in Boston, he met his future wife, Coretta Scott. Dr. King's leadership in the civil rights movement did not rise to prominence until the end of 1955. It was then he was recruited to serve as a spokesman for the African American population of Montgomery, Alabama, during the Montgomery bus boycott. Along with Rosa Parks, Dr. King spoke out to fight against desegregating the city's bus lines. After nearly 381 days of the bus boycott, the Supreme Court ruled that racial segregation in transportation was unconstitutional. Dr. King drew his inspiration for his speaking from his Christian faith and also the peaceful teachings of Mahatma Gandhi. His strong and powerful words, paired with his nonviolent approach and peaceful protests, grassroots organizing, civil disobedience, achieved to see what seemed to be impossible goals of achieving legal equality for African Americans and bringing to the light of an oppression of people in 1957. Dr. King was elected the president of the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, which was designed to provide new leadership for the ongoing civil rights movement. In 1963, Dr. King led an assembly consisting of multiple civil rights groups in an active, nonviolent campaign aimed at bringing attention to what was considered the most segregated city in America, Birmingham, Alabama. Captured by television cameras, the brutality of the city's police ensued, while mass amounts of young black men and women were assaulted by dogs and pummeled by water hoses. These outrageous responses by the city's police ultimately led to national outrage and a push for unprecedented civil rights legislation in the federal government. During this time, Dr. King wrote a compilation of his philosophies and tactics known as Letter from a Birmingham Jail. Later that same year, Dr. King delivered what was said to be his most remembered speech, I Have a Dream, which was given at the National Mall in front of over 250,000 people. The mass dissent on the National Mall was due to the March for Jobs and Freedom, more commonly known as the March on Washington. The speech affirmed his status as a leader of social change, thus inspiring action in our nation pertaining to civil rights. Soon after, he was named Time Magazine's Man of the Year. In 1964, at the young age of 35, Dr. King became the youngest person ever to be the recipient of the Nobel Peace Prize. His acceptance speech in Oslo was one that many say was among the most powerful ever given at the event. He also stated upon learning he had earned the award that the $54,000 in prize money would go directly to the furtherance of the civil rights movement. Also that same year, the March on Washington contributed to Congress passing the Civil Rights Act, tearing down the inequalities and barriers for African Americans. This act was a direct result for the March for Voting Rights from Selma to Montgomery, which Dr. King had led. For the last few years of Dr. King's life, his culminating focus was known as the Poor People's Campaign, emphasizing economic change for impoverished Americans. Dr. King's life and the nearly 13 years of nonviolent activism ended swiftly and tragically on the 4th of April in 1968 at a hotel in Memphis, Tennessee. While standing on a second-floor balcony, he was assassinated. His funeral ceremony was held in his hometown of Atlanta, Georgia, where high-level leaders of all races and political affiliation were in attendance. The primary thing Dr. King fought so passionately for was equality, equal rights, and treatment for everyone, regardless of race, color, sex, or religion. The years of dedication and numerous rallies and speeches were all for the perseverance and the progression towards civil rights. We are here today in our multicultural society as equals due to the perseverance and dedication of leaders like Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to share the struggles and perseverance of a few of the dedicated people in our country's history. As you reflect on what the meaning of today's holiday signifies, think of where we might be as a nation had the courageous Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. decided not to pursue his lengthy battle for equal rights. Thank you.